So the past mentioning a brief episode from the life of Hud alayhi salam. And it focuses, just like the previous stories, on the message of the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Specifically the message that he was delivering to his community and how they initially responded with opposition and rejection. So in the verses that we covered last week, Hud alayhi salam highlighted 3 faults of his people. And all 3 of these faults, they were rooted in having love for the life of this world. So as we discussed briefly, through building lofty structures, Ad was looking for glory. And by building strong palaces, they were searching for immortality. And by being oppressive, they were seeking dominance. And all 3 of these are symptoms of the same disease, which is love of this world. So the desire for glory, immortality, and dominance, they are all rooted in being attached to the life of this world and forgetting about the life of the hereafter. And last week we talked about a few of the verses in the Quran that constantly remind us about the reality of this world. That this world is temporary, it's going to come to an end, it's not going to last forever. There is an expiration date on it, as opposed to the life of the hereafter, which is a life of eternity. We're going to be there forever. So this is something that we as believers are constantly reminded about throughout the entire Quran. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants this to be part of our mindset. He wants this to be a part of our attitude. And He wants this concept to be instilled within our hearts and within our minds. It's something that we should constantly be thinking about. And that's why Hud alayhi salam, he now reminds his people once again to have taqwa. He reminds them once again to be conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he says, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُونَ. So fear Allah and obey me. Or be conscious of Allah and obey me. So be conscious, aware, and mindful of the existence, the oneness, the power, might, glory, and majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You should consciously be aware of Allah's existence and all of His attributes. Fear Him, fear His punishment, and fear the consequences of your beliefs and actions. And be conscious and aware of the reality of the life of this world. And this is the exact same phrase that was repeated by Nuh alayhi salam to his people as well. So the previous story that we covered in Surah al-Shu'arā, it was the story of Nuh alayhi salam, the story of the Prophet Noah. And in this story, the same message was repeated. The same phrase was repeated several times. فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُونَ. That be conscious of Allah, be afraid of Allah, and obey me and follow me. Now, after reminding them of this reality, Hud alayhi salam then goes on to remind them of all the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them. That even though they disbelieve in Allah, even though they associate partners with Allah, even though they are immoral, they're sinful, despite all of that, Allah still has blessed them with immense and amazing blessings. So He's reminding them that all of the things that they're enjoying here in the life of this world are definitely blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So He tells them, وَاتَّقُوا الَّذِي أَمَدَّكُمْ بِمَا تَعْلَمُونَ أَمَدَّكُمْ بِأَنْعَامٍ وَبَنِينَ وَجَنَّاتٍ وَعُيُونَ. And be conscious of the one who has provided you with all that you know. He has provided you with cattle and children, and gardens and springs. So again, we find Hud alayhi salam first reminding his people to have taqwa. وَاتَّقُوا الَّذِي أَمَدَّكُمْ بِمَا تَعْلَمُونَ. That be conscious, be aware of the one who has taught you everything that you know. So all this knowledge that you have acquired, all these skills that you possess in terms of building these amazing structures and architecture and engineering, all of that has come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So be conscious of Him. And the fact that this has been repeated several times now, it should be enough for us to understand its importance and significance. So far this command, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهِ or فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهِ وَاتَّقُوا الَّذِي, it has been repeated so many times in this surah. And the fact that it's being repeated so many times, it should make us recognize how important, how significant it truly is. And as believers, we should recognize that taqwa, God consciousness, is perhaps one of the most important qualities and characteristics that we are supposed to possess. It's something that we're supposed to be concerned about, and it's something we're supposed to nurture and develop. It is one of the most foundational characteristics or qualities that we are supposed to have as believers. So Hud alayhi salam, he's reminding his people that all of their skills, all of their knowledge, their wealth, their prosperity, their power and authority, everything they have is a result of the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَاتَّقُوا الَّذِي أَمَدَّكُمْ بِمَا تَعْلَمُونَ. That beware, be conscious of the one who has taught you everything that you know. Meaning that don't take pride, don't become arrogant, don't become haughty because of your own personal skills. Remember that all of these are coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in that is a powerful reminder for us as well. That one of the greatest deceptions, one of the greatest things that deceives us as human beings is our own personal abilities and capabilities. That oftentimes we have this false sense of power. We have this false sense of ability. And we fail to recognize that in reality we as human beings are weak. And the only power and ability we have is coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Allah tells us elsewhere in the Quran, وَمَا بِكُم مِّن نِعْمَةٍ فَمِنَ اللَّهِ. That any blessings you have, any blessings you possess, they are coming directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's something that's supposed to make us grateful, it's supposed to make us appreciative. It's not supposed to make us arrogant and pride. Rather, it should have the opposite effect. It should create a sense of humility. That remember that He alone is the one who has provided you with all types of cattle and children, gardens and springs. He has given you a life of comfort, luxury, peace, security and prosperity. And all of these things in reality, they are a test, a trial from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is a concept we've spoken about briefly before as well. That prosperity, wealth, comfort, luxury, these are also tests. These are also trials from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah wants to see how we as believers are going to respond to these blessings. Are we going to respond with gratitude, with graciousness, with thankfulness, with humility? Or are we going to become arrogant and full of pride? Are we going to become people who have envy and jealousy and who misuse these blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So being in a state of prosperity and wealth and comfort and luxury is also a test. And this was the test being given to the nation of Ad, to the people of Hud alayhi salam. Right? They were tested with all of these blessings. But instead of, having a sense of gratitude and appreciation and being humble, they became arrogant and proud. And because of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala eventually took these blessings away from them. So Hud alayhi salam, he's reminding his community that the one who gave them these amazing blessings can also take them away or punish them for misusing them. And then Hud alayhi salam warns them about the possibility of punishment. And this warning is full of genuine care and concern. So he tells them, إِنِّي أَخَافُ عَلَيْكُمْ عَذَابَ يَوْمٍ عَظِيمٍ. That truly, I fear for you the punishment of a tremendous day. So this is Hud alayhi salam now expressing genuine care, genuine concern for his own community. That if you continue to be arrogant and full of pride, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may eventually take these blessings away from you and punish you. So as one of them, as their brother, he's warning them and telling them, if you continue to be proud, arrogant and ungrateful, then I fear that the punishment of a very difficult day will come upon you. This punishment will be a result of your disbelief, immorality, arrogance, pride and ingratitude. But unfortunately, their hearts had already become hard, and they were not affected by his warnings. Instead, they stubbornly refused to listen. And this is history repeating itself. This is a common story we see throughout the stories of all the prophets. That the prophets would warn their community, and instead of listening to that warning, they would become even more stubborn. They would show their ignorance, they would show their hard-heartedness, and they would respond instead with threats, or they would respond with mockery and ridicule. So this is the exact same thing that the people of Ad did. They respond by saying, قَالُوا سَوَاءٌ عَلَيْنَا أَوَعَفْتَ أَمْ لَمْ تَكُمْ مِنَ الْوَاعِظِينَ. They said, it is the same to us whether you admonish us or if you weren't from amongst those who admonish. Meaning it doesn't really matter. If you warn us or if you don't warn us, it won't have any result. It won't affect us in any way. We are set in our way, we are committed to our way of life, and we're not going to pay any attention to what you have to say. So the commentators, the mufassirun, they mention that this response is full of stubbornness and ignorance. Basically, they said it doesn't matter if you warn us or not. It makes no difference if you remind us or not. We're not going to believe and we're not going to listen. We're not going to give up our system of belief and way of life. And this is an extremely derogatory way of speaking, one which expresses their carelessness for whatever he might say. And this is very similar to what we are told regarding their response in Surah Hud. So in Surah Hud, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He actually tells us a part of the conversation that took place between Hud alayhi salam and the people of Ad and his community. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, they said, قالوا يا هود ما جئتنا ببينة وما نحن بتاركي آلهتنا عن قولك وما نحن لك بمؤمنين. That they said, O Hud, you have not brought us clear evidence, and we are not ones to leave our gods because you say so, nor are we believers in you. So again, they're responding with arrogance, they're responding with ignorance and stubbornness. They're saying, مَا جِئْتَنَا بِبَيِّنَةٍ. You haven't brought us clear enough proof. You haven't proven what you're saying is true. وَمَا نَحْنُ بِتَارِكِ آلِهَتِنَا عَنْ قَوْلِكَ. And we're not going to abandon our gods, our way of worship, our life, just because you say so. وَمَا نَحْنُ لَكَ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ. And we're not going to believe in you. And they add a clear indication that they are hardened and stubborn in their ways, and that they're never going to accept Hud alayhi salam's message and believe. So they say, إِنْ هَذَا إِلَّا خُلُقُ الْأَوَّلِينَ وَمَا نَحْنُ بِمُعَذَّبِينَ. That this is simply the practice of the ancients, and we will not be punished. So again, they're expressing even more stubbornness, even more ignorance, even more carelessness. That this is simply the practice of the ancients. إِنْ هَذَا إِلَّا خُلُقُ الْأَوَّلِينَ. Meaning, well, at least the commentators, they mentioned this can be understood in two different ways. The first is that it's referring to their current beliefs and practices. So they're saying we're simply following the religious beliefs and practices of our forefathers. So how can we abandon it and adopt something else? So essentially they're telling Hud alayhi salam that we're not going to believe you, we're not going to accept your message, because we're following the ways of our fathers and grandfathers and great-grandfathers and all of our forefathers who came before us. And it is very difficult for us to abandon our culture and our religion. And this is also a very similar common theme that we find throughout the stories of the prophets. The second way that it's interpreted, that it's referring to them criticizing Hud alayhi salam's message, that you are simply preaching ancient tales and fables. So based on that, they arrogantly said, وَمَا نَحْنُ بِمُعَذَّبِينَ. And we are not going to be punished. And this was the epitome of ignorance and stubbornness. So they're arguing, they're debating with Hud alayhi salam, who with genuine care and concern is trying to bring them back towards faith, who's trying to bring them back towards belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, towards a life of morality and ethics and God consciousness. And they're responding with ignorance. They're responding with stubbornness. And then they're boldly claiming that we're never going to be punished. What you're saying is a lie, what you're saying is untrue. Now the surah itself here, it doesn't mention the back and forth that took place between Hud alayhi salam and his people. Instead, the surah jumps directly to the end of the story. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He leaves out a great portion of the story. Because the purpose is not to provide all of the details. The purpose in Surah al-Shu'arā is simply to give us a summary, to remind us of repeated history, to remind us that the struggles the Prophet ﷺ is facing in his life were experienced by many prophets that came before him. They were experienced by Ibrahim alayhi salam, they were experienced by Lut alayhi salam, by Musa alayhi salam, and they were also experienced by Nuh and Hud alayhi salam as well. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving these quick summaries just to remind the Prophet ﷺ that this is history repeating itself over and over again. So the surah jumps directly to the end of the story, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَكَذَّبُوهُ فَأَهْلَكْنَاهُمْ. So they rejected him and we destroyed them. Right? Two simple words in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains to us the end and the destruction of the people of Ad. So this is a really good place to stop, and we'll pick up from here right when we get back. So stay tuned and stay guided with Guide Us TV.
Prayer.
Okay. Take a breath.
Right.
Where's your water?
No water. It's
You're
okay.
fasting?
Afterwards.
At night? We don't have any water for the chef?
It's alright.
Oh,
Afterwards.
yeah.
Oh, Jazakallah khair.
It's cold too.
What's this?
I made it.
You don't leave it up there all the time, remember?
Yeah.
You're switching it around, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you're a sweetheart. Get ready. Get set. 2, 1.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome back. So we broke and we're speaking about verse number 139, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us the ending of the story of Hud alayhi salam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He explains the end of the story with two simple words. فَكَذَّبُوهُ, they rejected Hud alayhi salam. They denied him, they called him a liar, they belied him. فَأَهْلَكْنَاهُمْ, so we destroyed them. So they rejected Hud alayhi salam, they called him a liar, they opposed him, and they refused to accept his message. They refused to believe in the oneness of Allah and life after death. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed them with an extremely fierce, severe, and cold wind. So these two simple words are used to describe the end of the mighty people of Ad and their symbols of power. So again, when we look back at this story historically, this was supposed to be a very powerful nation. They were powerful, strong people who had these amazing structures and all these symbols of glory and dominance and authority. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wiped them out within a moment. That even their destruction is mentioned very briefly, just to show that they were not important. They were insignificant. And they're not important, they're insignificant because they didn't accept the message of the Prophet. Because they didn't come back to the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they were completely wiped off the face of this earth, and their great city, buildings and structures were left in ruin. That there's no sign of their luxury, their cattle, their children, gardens and springs. There's only destruction and rubble. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us regarding them in Surah Fussilat. فَأَمَّا عَادٌ فَاسْتَكْبَرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ وَقَالُوا مَنْ أَشَدُّ مِنَّا قُوَّةً. As for Ad, they were arrogant upon the earth without any right. Right? فَاسْتَكْبَرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ. They had kibr, they were extremely proud and arrogant, بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ, and they had no right to do so. وَقَالُوا مَنْ أَشَدُّ مِنَّا قُوَّةً. And they would say, who is greater than us in strength? That there's no one stronger than us, there's no one more powerful than us. أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا أَنَّ اللَّهَ الَّذِي خَلَقَهُمْ هُوَ أَشَدُّ مِنْهُمْ قُوَّةً. Do they not consider that Allah who created them was greater than them in strength? That's a very profound statement. أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا, didn't they see, didn't they recognize, didn't they contemplate أَنَّ اللَّهَ الَّذِي خَلَقَهُمْ هُوَ أَشَدُّ مِنْهُمْ قُوَّةً. That Allah, the one who created them, the one who gave them their power and luxury and wealth, was stronger than them in terms of strength. وَكَانُوا بِآيَاتِنَا يَجْحَدُونَ. But they were rejecting our signs. So then Allah mentions what He did to them. فَأَرْسَلْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ رِيحًا صَرْصَرًا فِي أَيَّامٍ نَحِسَاتٍ لِنُذِيقَهُمْ عَذَابَ الْخِزْيِ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَلَعَذَابُ الْآخِرَةِ أَخْزَى وَهُمْ لَا يُنصَرُونَ. So we sent upon them a screaming wind during days of misfortune to make them taste the punishment of disgrace in this worldly life. So فَأَرْسَلْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ رِيحًا صَرْصَرًا. Right, we sent upon them screaming winds. فِي أَيَّامٍ نَحِسَاتٍ, during days of misfortune and regret. لِنُذِيقَهُمْ عَذَابَ الْخِزْيِ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا, to make them taste the punishment of disgrace in the life of this world. Meaning, even though they were like wiped off the face of this earth, even though they were punished so severely, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying He only gave them a taste of punishment. لِنُذِيقَهُمْ, a taste of this disgrace in the life of this world. وَلَعَذَابُ الْآخِرَةِ أَخْزَى, but the punishment of the hereafter is even more disgracing. Meaning their punishment in the life to come will be even more severe. وَهُمْ لَا يُنصَرُونَ, and they will not be helped. So this is a very, very powerful imagery, powerful destruction of this mighty nation. And the reason why they were destroyed is because of their arrogance, their pride, their ingratitude, their rejection of their prophet and messenger. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He ends the passage with those powerful verses that are repeated over and over again throughout this surah. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَةً وَمَا كَانَ أَكْثَرُهُمْ مُؤْمِنِينَ. That indeed in that is a sign, but most of them are not believers. وَإِنَّ رَبَّكَ لَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الرَّحِيمُ. And truly your Lord is the Almighty, the All-Wise. So إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَةً. Truly in everything that has just been mentioned from the story of Hud alayhi salam with the people of Ad, there is a sign. There are lessons, there are reminders and morals. وَمَا كَانَ أَكْثَرُهُمْ مُؤْمِنِينَ. But unfortunately, most people don't learn from history and they repeat the same mistakes over and over again. And again, these verses, they're repeated at the end of the story of each prophet mentioned in the surah to comfort the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, reminding him that he is not alone in his struggles, that others throughout history had to experience the same struggles as him. So the commentators mention that all of these stories in Surah al-Shu'arā, they are being mentioned for a specific purpose. And one of those purposes is tasliyatan lin-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. It is to console and comfort the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So if you look at the historical context of the surah, it was revealed during the Meccan period of prophethood. Right? That period where the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam and the Muslim community was going through difficulties. They were going through hardships, they were going through trials. They were facing severe opposition from the leadership and people of Mecca. So they were being mocked, they were being ridiculed, they were being harassed, they were being tortured and persecuted. So through these stories, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is comforting and consoling the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well as the companions, that your brothers throughout history, all the prophets that came before you, they had to go through similar struggles. They were also opposed by their people. They were also rejected by their people. They were also called liars and imposters. But they remained steadfast, they remained firm and strong and patient and persevered. And eventually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted them help and assistance and victory. So the same thing is being promised to you as believers. The same thing is being promised to the Muslims. That yes, you're going to experience hardships and difficulties and trials, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always on the side of the truth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will always aid and support belief and the people of belief and iman. And eventual victory, eventual success will be for the believers. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَإِنَّ رَبَّكَ لَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ and Ar-Rahim. That truly your Lord is Al-Aziz. He is the Almighty, the All-Powerful, the one who overcomes and cannot be overcome. And He is Ar-Rahim, He is the absolutely, infinitely most merciful. And that is how the story of Hud alayhi salam ends in this particular surah. So once again here, the story is an example of a community, of a nation being destroyed because of their arrogance, because of their pride, because of their love for this world. So one of the main lessons, one of the main morals from this particular surah is the destructiveness of having love for this world. Right? The destructive nature of being in love with the life of this world. As the Prophet ﷺ told us, حُبُّكَ الشَّيْء يُعْمِي وَيُسِمْ. That your love for a particular thing, it causes you to become blind and deaf. And that love for this world, it is the root cause of all sin. So this is a reminder, this is a lesson that we should all remember. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us amongst those who are able to follow in the footsteps of Hud alayhi salam and all the previous prophets and messengers, to keep us firm and steadfast in patience, and to always assist us and help us as people of faith. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaykum wa rahmatullah.
Let me jump in real quick because we got to try to raise some support in the next 2 minutes, and then we'll be off the air. Then you can have it back again.
We'll pray.
Just put this on over here. And ready, go. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We are back, and you've been watching Guidance TV, coming to you live all the way from right here in Dar al-Falah in Tustin, California. In order to keep our channels running, we need you to do something. Right now, our programs are free, without advertising, no commercials, no spam, no scam, okay? People around the world are watching us on the satellite, our antennas in Los Angeles, New York, Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, Columbus, Ohio, and more, as well as the apps for the phones. We always make sure that everything is free with no commercials for a reason, because we want this to be for the sake of Allah. This is not a money-making scheme at all. Trust me. And in today's world, when we find that there are certain financial issues going around, we realize more now than ever before the importance of you and me taking our responsibility seriously. So this is your chance right now. Take out your phone and send a text message to me right now. The text message is just 5 letters. ISLAM. The word Islam. Send that word right now to this phone number. 414 414. 41444. And also, you can go to donatetoislam.com. Donatetoislam.com. That is how you can support the channel, keep it on, keep our websites going too. All of this for the sake of Allah. Be sure you say Bismillah before you start. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Sheikh, you're up.
There.
He said I'm off the air.
Yeah.
It was automatic? There was nothing we could do.
Your mic.
Huh?
Your mic.
Oh, what did it do? Fall down? So,
Yeah.
I thought it was in my pocket. There you go.
Allahu Akbar, Allah.